Take the roll.
Karen? Here. Carolyn?
Here.
Diane?
Here.
Patty? Here. Linda?
Here. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What did I say? June 19th. I said June 19th?
That's correct.
It's July 17th. For the record, today's date is July 17th. Already has. All right, we have some special business to conduct tonight, so we are going to change our usual order. We will begin with public comments, then move to an executive session to interview our trustee candidates, but it doesn't look like anybody's registered for public comments. Okay. All right. Then I now need to make a motion, a motion to move into the executive session for the purpose of discussing the selection of a person to fill public office.
So motion.
Second.
Second. Did you take the roll in it?
Karen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes. Could I have a motion to resume our regular meeting?
It was about 2 hours, wasn't it?
It was a long time.
Yep.
Yes.
7:02 to 8:22.
Okay, so I want to go back to.
All right, do I hear a motion to return to our regular meeting?
Motion.
Second? Great. Then would you take the
Here
minutes,
it is.
please? Take the roll in.
Yes, Karen?
Yes. Here.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes. All right, before we take the next vote, I do want to make a couple of statements. This was a hugely difficult decision. We had two candidates that we both loved immensely, that had positives on both sides, but unfortunately there's only one position, and it put us into a situation where we have to choose one person. I just want to state that for the world. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to accept Sue Wilsey as the replacement trustee for the open position. Second. And would you take the vote?
Tim and Karen.
Yeah.
Karen? Yes. Carolyn?
I abstain.
Diane?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Linda? Yes. Tim?
Yes. Matt, we absolutely hope that when the time comes, in a year and a half, to go get those signatures, all right, and to run for office, you are a marvelous, marvelous candidate, and we loved everything you said. You just had to pick one.
No explanation.
So our heart goes out to you.
Seriously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really appreciate
Really
your
appreciate
interest.
that you went through this and you came and you talked to us.
We've
You had
never-
wonderful ideas, and we hope that you continue to express an interest.
When I saw that it was Sue, I knew that she was a very experienced and formidable person.
Yeah.
I understand.
All right.
Seriously, it was an extremely hard decision.
Yeah, as I said, I support the board's decision.
That's why it was so hard.
You are true to your word. Yes, true to your word.
All right.
Yes, really
So
appreciate
again,
you
thank you
coming.
very, very much, man.
It was very nice
Yes.
to meet you.
We hope to see you around.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
Very, very nice to meet you. I will help, no.
All right, and we do have to continue with the meeting because it's later. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the tentative budget and appropriations public hearing of June 19th, 2019?
Yes. Second.
Okay, is that the right date, man? Or is it
This time it is.
It's, okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is July.
So, do we have any changes to this, these minutes? Short as they are.
Can I just make a comment? I don't want to offer any changes. I just would wish in the future if we could try to just incorporate a few other comments and topics that are discussed in our minutes to give us a more rounded approach of what was discussed. And that's all I have to say on that.
All right. Do I have any other,
Oh, that was this one.
yeah, it's to June 19th,
Yeah,
6:55 PM.
Yeah, the 6th.
This one, okay.
Any other additions or changes or anything that makes sense? All right, Diane, would you please take a roll?
Karen,
Yes.
Carolyn,
No,
Disturbing?
Diane,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Linda, yes, Tim.
Yes. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 19th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Second, great. Anybody got any updates or changes to this one? Let's kind of go in order. Karen?
No.
Patty?
No.
Diane?
No.
Linda?
No.
No. Carolyn?
there were many, but I'm gonna I don't have any.
Okay.
It's too complicated, but thank you.
All right, well, I appreciate that, thank you. I don't have any updates either. Diane, would you please take the roll?
Karen,
Yes.
Carolyn,
No,
Diane,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Linda, yes, Tim.
Yes. All right, next item on the agenda is a president's report, only because I did have a number of all right, just a quick reminder to, that email is our official form of communication. I think at one point I mentioned my personal email, but that was incorrect. We want to make sure that our communications are in our trustee emails. And let's all try to check it maybe once or twice a week, and then a little bit more frequently right before the meetings. I had sent an email to all of you as a response to Trustee Carabota's, or the Maine Township Trustee Carabota's comment that we should merge with the Village of Niles. If you did not get that email, please let me know. Okay, you all got it. Okay, great. One thing I did want to talk about, so last week, one of our residents accused us of malfeasance. And this accusation was also made during our discussions of the RMRF, I believe. And it concerned me, so I did a little research on the topic. A claim of malfeasance is a serious accusation. According to Black's Law Dictionary and most courts' interpretations, malfeasance implies dishonest conduct on the part of the public official and generally means the commission by a public official or staff member of a wrongful or unlawful act during the performance of that person's duties. So, for example, in regard to the line item for the replacement of the roof, there's nothing outside the board's lawful authority in approving the budget line item for this need. And all of our other actions have been within our authority to do so. Anyone can agree or disagree with our decisions, but they should not be characterized as malfeasance since no one has done anything illegal or dishonest. So if you run into somebody who accuses you of malfeasance, please ask them what illegal or dishonest action you or the board has done, because I believe this accusation should not be taken lightly. All right, just wanted to tell you that I did some research on that. Regarding our trustee and staff reports, I've been reviewing some of the meetings of other organizations and found that the reports by and large are by either the board or staff members are generally factual, and our responses are limited to either short clarifications or thank yous or acknowledgements. And moving forward in our meetings, what I would like is during a report to please limit your comments to those short clarifications. And if there's something in a person's report that strikes you as needing a full board discussion, just jot it down, and then let's bring it up in the other portion so that we can agree to put it on the agenda for a larger discussion, so that the board could consider it, you know, for the next meeting. I think that would really make things run a lot smoother in our meetings. So let's try it and see how it works for us. All right, that's all I have to say on that. Okay, next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Kathy?
First thing I want to say is, bear with me, this is the first time I'm actually saying it out loud. I might slip. Okay, June is the 12th month of the fiscal year. And 100% of the way through the budget. The library's overall expenses were under budget by 89%, which I don't know about you, I think that's pretty darn good. I wish my home was the same way. Total revenue was 104% of the budget, fines 163%, replacement tax 93%, investment income, which is really cool, 191%. That's fantastic. Passport income, 166% more than we anticipated. That also is fantastic. Salaries, 98%, which is pretty good. Library materials, 100%, which is less than 4,000 under budget for the year. I don't understand, how can it be 100% and less than 4,000?
Oh, decimal places. The software rounds.
Oh, okay,
So it's
okay.
like 99.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm looking at it, it doesn't, you know, I kind of work with math at school. You know, okay. Library operation expenditures, 86% of the overall and running budget, under budget rather. General administration at 81%. Overall categories continued well under budget. Employees' fringe benefits was slightly under budget by 97%. Utilities under budget by 94%, which means they really are paying attention to the lights and what kind of stuff, which is good. Capital expenditures under budget by 40%. Page 17. Building maintenance under budget by 96%. Okay, did I have a second page for this?
No.
Okay, I just didn't say the page numbers on the other ones.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay? Everybody's okay with this? If there's any questions?
Yeah.
Right, but just as clarification, when you're saying it, just so that when our constituents, our community is listening, it's not budget by 96, it's at 96, so it's 4% under budget, not 96% under budget, the way when you say
No,
by.
I'm sorry, I
It's okay, I just wanted.
misread it. Thank you for catching
Make
it.
sure that
Thank
people
you
aren't
for
thinking we're
catching it.
96%
It's at
under budget for utilities.
96%, but it's under budget of
Yeah.
what it was.
Right, so
Okay,
we're
thank you
under
for catching it.
budget,
Like I
but
said.
but not by 96, just
I-
so,
it's
for
my
clarification
first
for
time.
the community.
It's my first time, I'm a little bit shaky.
No, it's,
You're
no,
fine,
it's
don't worry
really
about it.
great, perfect.
Okay.
And
All right.
can we ask questions?
Yeah, absolutely, let's go around.
Go
You
ahead.
can start.
Karen, okay.
Yeah, you start.
All right, so, yeah, when I was looking through 191%, I mean, really, that's all our investment from where you're putting it into the different banks, every month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, just to review, we put it into one brokerage account, and it's with Fifth Third.
Oh, okay.
We worked with Fifth Third to buy securities. I say securities, but it's really certificates of deposit and U.S. Treasuries, T-bills.
So more secure.
Yeah, according to our policy.
Right.
As the money comes in, as we collect it, I make sure that, we're getting investments or getting it invested, so that we always have money coming due in order to fund the operations
And we're liquid enough, is what you're
Yeah,
saying. We're liquid,
absolutely.
yes. No, that was great. When I saw that, I was like,
That's
this
fantastic.
wonderful. And then as I was going through the report myself, I mean, I was just putting under budget. So when we are setting this budget, and I think it's very clear now that we're at your end, that, because there's been items said before that, oh, we're putting this budget here and people, your staff needs to spend every dime, that's not how you seem to operate. So I really appreciate, I want to clarify that, because the numbers are true, and this is the fact. That, yes, we set the budget for you, but you are doing your due diligence to make sure that you are being fiscally responsible and not just spending every last dime because you have that budget. So, thank you. There was one question I have on it, because there was one here that was pretty high, the bank fees. 15, I believe. The second to the last on general administration, that was 143%. Am I looking at the right thing?
Yeah,
I'm just
so the
questioning,
budget-
like how, yeah.
The budget was $1,200, and the actual was $1,716, which was 43% over budget.
Right, so what bank fees do we get?
We have two kinds of bank fees. We have credit card processing fees. So usually whenever you use a credit card, the banks that are processing it, one of the ways that they make money is they charge you a small percentage of the transaction. So
Right, when we collect money
That's
from other
right.
people. Oh,
So
that makes
the more
sense.
we use credit cards, the higher those charges are. So
That makes
instead
sense,
of
because I'm thinking, are you not paying, are we?
Yeah, we doing something wrong.
Are we overdrafting?
Yeah, right.
Now, the second way, the second thing that's in that account is fees on our checking accounts, our business accounts from Fifth Third Bank. And for a while, we weren't paying any fees to them at all.
Ah.
And what happened is, since we're more successful in the passport application business, we are getting more checks in. Each check that is deposited counts as a transaction. We have something like 250 free transactions included in our arrangement every month. So, I started to notice we were getting fees, so I called them up and he said, and we walked through it and went through a couple of months and stuff like that. And, as a result, we are paying,
So
we are
that's a
paying
fee that we
fees.
didn't think about because we didn't even realize that would come up.
Right.
Yeah,
I didn't
and that
realize
was
that there was a
things
limit
that-
on the number of transactions.
So,
Can we renegotiate that? Or are we stuck with it?
It's not by contract. It's, it's basically, they say, this is our offering,
Okay.
this is our commercial offering.
Okay.
is it better for us to have two different accounts so that we
Um,
don't have?
Yeah,
overage?
they can see through that. I mean, we'd have to go
Different
to a different bank altogether.
Okay.
fraud.
I don't know.
No, good idea, I agree.
I just saw the bank fees and I was like, that's just weird.
Yeah.
I mean, other things I can understand why you would be over budget, or how that can happen with, custodial supplies or something like that, oh my gosh, but that I was just that was just like a little red flag for me.
Seriously, how well we're doing with passports. Who would've
Right.
thought we would be doing as well as we are.
Could we, and we can't really change it, because I know when my family came in and got our passports, we had to do every single check, everyone
Yeah.
has, and I think there's any way around that, you have to do all separate checks, so it's not like we can do one for the four of us, so I think we're
So,
kind of stuck with that,
you
right?
need one check per application that
Right.
goes to
So
the
we're-
State Department.
Yeah, so we're stuck.
And at first, we were doing one check per application for our fee, so that was easier for us to track the fee, but now what we're doing is allowing families to combine them. So the fee that that we charge is $35 per application. So like in your case, where there were 4 applications, we would take a check for $140.
As one rather than.
Right, because,
Okay,
you know,
fair.
we're comfortable with the process.
Then
and
the other
everything.
one goes to.
And then the other,
passport service.
then the other 4 checks, each one attached to an individual application that goes to the Department of
Okay,
State.
all
So
right,
that might
that's,
lower
that's all my
fees a
questions
little
that I,
bit by doing it.
so I think,
A little
hold
bit,
on.
Not much.
Oh, can you just explain the net surplus deficit?
Well, this is,
Where are you looking at?
Page 17.
so, so the net surplus deficit is basically what's left over at the end of the year. So if you look at all the revenue that came in on page 13 under the year-to-date actual, which is $7,383,000, and you compare it to the total expenditures on line 17, which is $6,523,351 under year-to-date actual. Do you see that number?
Yeah.
You subtract the $6,500,000 from the $7,003,000, and you end up with $859,000. Like the net loss or net income in a business, but in the case of the library, it's referred to as a net surplus or deficit.
Where did you get the 386? How do you calculate that on the far right side? Deficit.
So the variance in column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is $1,082,082. We did $1,082,082 better than we expected when we struck the budget. The column to the left of that is the year-to-date budget, which is a loss of $222,000. And if you take that $1,082,000 and relate it to the $222,000, it's approximately 4 times, or 386%. I believe that's all good stuff too.
I'm done.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's actually
Thank you
Carol,
very
you might
much.
wanna-
Oh, okay.
Let's go there. Yeah.
Okay.
Any
Carol.
questions?
Is it my turn? Okay, yeah, I'm actually looking at the same page, the income statement. I guess I'm reading this differently. So year-to-date variance shows $1,082,000. And I'm trying to figure out what we're comparing that to get the, like our actual, our year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget. And those figures aren't making sense to me.
You know, it's really
Isn't it supposed to be budget minus actual as variance?
it's actually, if I could stop that from printing, I would.
We
Yeah,
have this
it's
discussion almost
confusing.
every
Yeah, I think
year.
I know what I'm talking
Right.
about, and then I don't, then I'm
Yeah,
lost.
this last line
is-
is always really confusing.
I know, the variance is.
Right, so I'm gonna
we really
skip
don't know
that,
about.
that last line. So I'm gonna just look at
Yeah.
my year-to-date budget was $7,003,000. Our actual, which means every penny we spent, was $6,500. So we have $700,000 left.
Correct.
Okay, so I had a question. I know this report is up to June 30th, and it is now July, and I realize also that every expense isn't always calculated by 6/30. I was wondering if you knew where we might be now with our year-to-date variance based on, other expenses or reimbursements that may have had to be paid out?
It'll be approximately the same. A lot of, the advantage that we have is that the board meeting is on the 17th. We finished processing our accounts payable around, I think, the 10th. So we have 10 days run out in July to capture those, expenses we write checks for. So usually our cutoff procedures are pretty good. Where you will see a difference is when we go to full accrual, where we are looking at the changes in accrued personal time vacation time,
Right.
that will create a little bit of a variance there. We also have, on the plus side, a slight difference in the accrued interest receivable related to our investment income, which will add some income to it. So, I mean, generally, we're pretty stable around that number and don't expect it to change significantly.
So when can we say for certain, this is our exact variance as of year end? When will all the personnel additions be included in terms of?
No, it's all included.
So there is no need for it to change, is what you're saying?
As I said,
thought you mentioned.
we are going to make some adjustments, as I just discussed, which haven't been rolled into this yet.
Right.
If you want something that's official and stamped, 100% USDA.
No, I would
that
just like
happens
to
in-
figure after.
Excuse me. That happens in November when the accounting firm reports to us the results of the audit.
Well, the number I'm asking for is once you make these adjustments for the interest and the HR amounts, could you just let us know what that figure is? I didn't want to wait till November.
Sure.
I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you. And then I had a question before we move on, and it's also about the passports, which according to this,
What page is it?
I'm in revenues, page 13, it's the same, I think the same thing you were looking at. Let's see, I believe, oh, that's year-to-date actual, how about an easier figure? I know Susan mentions passports in a report, and I don't want to belabor that report, but what I'm looking for is, yes, our passport revenues is more than we anticipated. Is it possible, now that it's year end, could we now start to categorize our costs to provide this service, which would definitely be salaries, and I believe in April we mentioned there were 22 new trained employees for passports. I'm not sure how that equates to how Susan is scheduling, but based on what their new hourly rate is and the other costs incurred to provide this service, what really is the amount that we're seeing as a, what's the actual amount that we're gaining after we subtract all our costs? Because we've never had an opportunity to do that.
Well, first of all, our timekeeping system is an attendance system, which means if you're in the building and you're working, then you're clocked in. It's kind of like a punch, it's like kind of like a time clock. When you leave, you punch out. In between, there is no system or part of the system that we use that allows employees to categorize their time against specific tasks. So I'll never have, as long as we use the system, I'll never have exact auditable information on this, on what you're asking. Having said that, our passports on average take a quarter of an hour. Most of the people that are downstairs that are doing this operation, are in the $12 or $13 an hour range. But that doesn't include things like workers' comp insurance or Social Security or unemployment compensation. So for sake of round numbers, let's use $20 an hour. So each passport, of which it was about 1,650 or so, cost us $5 in employment costs. We also pay about $1,000 a year in mailing costs. And on top of that, we have some banking fees, for sake of argument, let's say half of the banking fees, so half of $1,700 is $850. So if you take the $1,650 passports that we did this year and tax them at $5 for salary and benefits. That's roughly $8,500 or thereabout. And then if you add the $1,000 for postage, it's $9,500, and the $850 for additional banking fees. I lost myself there. It's $10,350. So those are the actual operating costs of producing almost $58,000.
Well, more specifically, what I was hoping to capture is I noticed that Athena mentioned in June there were 166 passport applications. Now, I understand that we decided that someone who processes a passport application will be making more per hour than the staff in that department. So what I'm trying to figure out, for example, if it takes 15 minutes to process a passport and 20 are completed in a day, is this person getting paid 24 hours for the entire day? Is that how we're assessing how their salary now increases? When passports are only a portion of what they do?
Their hourly rate just went up. We now have 3 levels of clerks, which we're calling associates. We have the ones that mostly do shelving, and they're still being paid in the $8-ish range, which is kind of shocking and terrible. And then we have the associate 2s, which are doing a wide range of clerical tasks, and they're learning how to become passport agents. And then when they have added passport agents to their responsibilities, they become an associate 1. And they're, most of them, I think, start at around 14. So, and they're being paid $14 for all of the time that they're here. We don't have them clocking in at different rates for different work. They just are all getting that rate for the work that they're doing.
Okay, then I misunderstood. I thought passports were getting paid. People who now handle passports were being paid $24 an hour.
Oh, gosh, no.
$24 an hour.
Wow,
So
I
it's
wanted-
$14 an
So
hour?
most of them are about 14.
Yeah, so
Okay,
what I said initially
that's
was,
quite all right.
Yeah.
Can I just get this out, please? I appreciate your explanation. I think instead of waiting for an entire year, we should be able to ascertain the cost of passport services, even on a monthly basis. 166 applications per month. How many people are really designated to passports? And there should be a way to calculate the cost. But what I'm worried about now is I noticed you're relocating the passport desk to a secluded area, which is going to be all by itself. So now this passport agency person is going to be secluded from the entire
Well, they're having a glass door and a glass window, and they aren't like sitting in there waiting for people to come do passports. They're all
So
off
they're still
doing
part of a
all of,
department.
yeah, they're doing all of the clerical work, and then when somebody approaches the desk, they kind of check in at the desk first. They make sure they have all the materials they need for the passport. Then one of the agents goes and starts
And
working
we
with them.
decided that we needed to separate the passport agency from the other workings in the library?
It's a privacy issue. People can be talking about divorces and, we just found that they were having some really private kind of conversations taking place in the Commons, which is the busiest room in the library.
Okay, because I was trying to compare it to the post office. I'm thinking.
Yeah, well, that's not great.
Well, no, I don't know, and I'm thinking, are they sitting out in a public area?
They
When
are.
I went
Yeah, they are.
I went to
Yeah.
Elk
Okay.
Grove, it's a private room.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine, but what I'm trying to say is there should always be a way to ascertain costs and not so generalized. We know how many hours it takes to produce these passport applications. We know what costs are associated. I would think in a month when we know we've filled out 166 applications, the cost associated with that should somehow
Well, I think we
be
can, Carolyn.
put together.
We can assume 15 minutes per application,
Right.
$5 for each one.
Well,
$14.
I'd like to see that as the information I receive when we talk about passport applications, because
Okay,
we
well, I'll tell you what,
like
Carolyn.
the fact
I
that we
understand.
make money, we
Right.
need to know how much it costs
Yeah,
us to make
here,
that money.
this is exactly the kind of thing I was talking about in my president.
Well, and if I may, it's not my question that takes so long, it's the wordy explanation.
I understand.
Which I'm not responsible for,
Sure.
so I apologize.
No, you're absolutely fine.
Thank you, though.
So
Okay.
do you want this to be a larger board discussion?
No, I would like to receive on a
Well,
monthly
but I think
basis that
this should be,
information.
I think it should be a larger board discussion if we want the staff to do this. So let's put this on the agenda.
So I
for
cannot
next month.
request this information as a trustee.
I
You
think
can
that,
request that the board discusses whether or not we want the staff to produce this information.
To provide the cost for the application.
And it's a reasonable request, let's
It
just
is a
talk about
reasonable
it.
request.
But I don't want to do it during the report.
But in any case, it would be an estimate. I mean, because we
Yeah.
did, as Greg said,
Why?
we don't have that software.
Well, Carolyn, let's put it on the agenda for next month, and let's talk, well, let's, that,
right
kinda
now, we're just
reasonable.
going
It's
over
about
the
Right.
$5 per
Yeah.
application.
expenditures.
Those are all generalities.
okay. Anything else? All right, Karen?
Yeah, just a couple things. Again, congratulations on the extra income brought in through investment income and transfers. Glad to see both of those bringing in more money. One thing I had a question about substitutes. We didn't spend nearly as much money as we thought we would on substitutes, and I was just wondering if there's some reason for that, and why we didn't have as many substitutes. I mean, I'm glad that we didn't spend it, but why?
I sometimes sort of scare them like you're spending it too fast, and then they're like, oh, I'll just go work it myself, and then I end up with the supervisors working 45 hours a week, which I do not want. And so, yeah, it's an ebb and flow kind of thing too. It's a little hard to
I noticed that
estimate.
also, because before we were high because we
Yeah.
had some,
Yeah.
and then this year
And
we're
then I'm
really
like,
low,
oh,
and
we
I was
can't
like,
go so
wow.
much. And now, yeah, they pulled
Yeah.
back too much and they're overworking themselves, and it's too bad, but there we are.
Okay, all right, and then just one other thing, page 16, under capital expenditures. You know, during this recent budget discussion, we were criticized for budgeting and what we did for expenditures, but as, you know, we can see, and as we've discussed, just because we budget an amount doesn't mean we necessarily spend that whole amount. We budgeted $733,000 for a lot of capital expenditures. Last year, we didn't get to all of them, so we didn't spend all that money. We just spent a small fraction of what we budgeted. That money, the rest of the money stayed in the bank, and hopefully we'll get to some of those improvements during the coming year. So I just think that, you know, sort of illustrates that we don't, you know, what's in the budget is not necessarily what's spent. So that's all I have to say.
Katie, this is your report.
Well, seriously, I asked a lot of questions when I came in to meet with him, and I'm satisfied with my answers that I got.
Okay, that's good, and I am fine with it as well.
Can I just ask one last thing?
Absolutely.
Our balance, at least as of this report, June 30th,
Uh-huh.
our
Are you on page what,
variance,
Carolyn, page what?
17 of the income, the consolidated income statement.
Mhm.
So, give or take, I'm not sure what the final number will be, but to date, we're at $778,770 for the
Variance,
variance.
right, correct.
And I was wondering, based on, I know we have capital projects that we're anticipating and some other expenses that will be in our new budget, could we decrease the amount of that spending by applying this directly to something? I mean, are we just going to take 778,000 and throw it into the next year budget, which is already at I think we're at 8.4.
I don't
So-
believe this money would be put into the budget.
Will it be left into the
It's
account
in our
and it
general
will just
account.
grow? What I'm
Right.
trying to say is, we just saved 778,000, couldn't we subtract that from what we think our budget expenses for next year? As opposed to
That would
just
be a
adding it
general
to the,
account.
it's like adding it to a larger number. I mean, it's a substantial amount of money, and it would,
It's a good question, but again,
reduction.
that would be a large
Okay,
board
great.
discussion
all right, sounds good.
and more for our budget discussion. I would have to,
No, I think it should be a decision before. I mean, we're in a new budget year, we have a balance of $778,000. How can we adequately apply that to upcoming expenses and decrease our budget
right,
costs?
I understand. So
Okay, thanks.
it's a larger discussion. Okay. All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve the payment of bills for operating expenses of $234,000, $439.81, and payroll expenses of $302,000, $485.74, for a total monthly expense of $536,000, $1,925.55. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Patty,
Second.
Great. Any discussion on this item? No, I don't see anybody. Okay, and can you take a roll, please?
Karen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
No.
Diane?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Next item on the agenda is director's report. Susan?
All right, I will keep it very short because I know you still have some other good things to hear tonight. I was also going to comment on the great investment strategy that Greg has employed. I think he is making just a tremendous amount of money for the library. He is a little underappreciated for that, but I'm glad that you guys mentioned it tonight. So, and also I do think the amount of work that went into setting up the passport service was a lot, but I think it was really starting to pay off, not just in income, but also in service. I think it is bringing in a very different group of people to come use the library. They're getting used to the idea of what a public library is. Some of them haven't set foot in a public library in many years, and I think it's just really an outstanding service that we are offering, and I really appreciate it.
I really think it's a great service. I've been in the post office many times, seeing the long lines in there, and I feel very sorry for those people over there. I'm glad we can provide this service and take a little burden off the library and help those people get their passports.
Well, they always look so miserable. And the people here don't look miserable, so.
Well, I think there's more of a variety of hours that they can come in.
Yes,
Yes,
that was
yes.
why the State Department started recruiting us, yeah. I want to give you a heads up that in August, we're going to do a group photo with all of the trustees, and I have asked Sasha to have a whole page of the newsletter devoted to trustees. So, don't come in from your evening run. So I'm giving you plenty of warning. The meeting,
You always come in
August
when
meeting.
it's been.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and also,
Wait till August.
if we could do it a little before the meeting, that would be
All
ideal
right.
as well, because after the meeting, people are tired and crabby now.
Well, I'm liable to be in August because I'll be back at work, dealing with those little juveniles.
I just wanted to mention, I know I promised I would do a program presentation tonight, but I am not. Tim and I had a conversation and we want to do something more in-depth on programs, so it will be possibly August. We'll get that on the calendar. And last but not least, I want to invite you all, we do have a water bottle filler right outside the boardroom, literally right outside the boardroom.
Really?
And if you wanted to bring a water bottle, you could do that, and then we would not be, Diane and Dave wouldn't be making all the trips to Costco to pick up water.
I think it's
I
a good
definitely
idea.
did
We'll do that.
And we will certainly have it for anybody who has
I
forgotten.
didn't even
We're more than happy
realize
to
you
do that.
had it.
And if you want to keep it here, we can, we can keep it here, I'll
I'm
wash
gonna
it
use
for you.
this water bottle.
No, that's okay.
All right, that's all I
Yeah,
have.
right.
Now they're gonna be
Good
filling up our
idea,
water
is
bottles
that
for it.
the water bottle?
I think it's
It's a
a
great idea.
We have those at work, I refill my water all the
It's
time.
right between the bathrooms, yeah, it's a drinking fountain and then a water bottle filler, and then the one downstairs is the one that really gets a lot of use. Yeah.
Okay.
When you don't stupid one.
So that is all I have, if you have any questions for me, I'm
Great.
happy to answer them.
Anything else, Karen, you want to go around?
Nope, no.
Patty?
No, I read what was in here and I was impressed by a lot of it.
Diane?
Excellent as usual, thank you,
Linda?
Susan.
Carolyn?
Just once again, there is so much in this director's report. I really, really, really wish we would consider some online way to publish this information, even if you took maybe some of them. I'm more concerned about the programs, the library itself. If we could get this on our website, once a month, just change it, so everybody could see what we do, what's happening. Sometimes you even have pictures of, you have pictures of our patrons. I just feel like it's a great report, but it needs more exposure. And if we could, I know I've mentioned it before, but if we could keep it in the back of our mind.
Sure.
I only have one question. Did you hear about the guy with the car What happened with his car that overheated?
It had to get it towed, I heard, yeah.
Did it?
Yeah, it's leaking through the DeLorean, yes.
Oh.
So fun while we had it.
Which is why they stopped
How
selling them.
sad. Their
It
car
was
is
great
like,
for the 6 blocks.
yeah,
Okay, very nice. So we're done with this, move on.
Good.
Yep.
Quick question just regarding the trustee calendar. So one big event, Stand-Up Fest, is going to be before our next
Yes.
board meeting, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, encourage you to come down, check it out.
There's a lot
And we'll
of
be
I
here.
was planning.
Are we meeting with, are we having Spendable here again?
No, no, that was a one-time.
Is there anybody else that we're having?
There's no like guest star, they're doing
All right.
an Instagrammable, the second floor is going to be transformed into an Instagram experience where, and this is not so much for people our ages, but you know, a lot of people love going and taking pictures, selfies of themselves and all sorts of things, so that's.
You have no idea what interest.
Yeah, to me, I'll be like the guy in the commercial. Can you take a
Yeah.
selfie of me?
All right, so we'll encourage all of our board members to attend our Fandom Fest. Very nice.
Excuse me, is that a Saturday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
Okay, great. Very nice, thank you so much. Okey dokey. All right, we have a secretary's report tonight. Diane, would you like to read that aloud for us?
Is
A
that-
certified copy.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I think.
I'm reading the
I'm so
secretary.
sorry. Where should I have there? Oh, yeah.
A
this is-
certified,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
a certified copy of ordinance 19-03, an ordinance for budget and appropriations of the Niles Main District Library, Cook County, Illinois, for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and ending June 30, 2020, along with a certificate of publication, was filed with the Cook County Clerk on Friday, June 28, 2019. The ordinance was published in the Journal Topics and News on Wednesday, June 26, 2019.
great. Thank you so much, Diane.
Let me ask one question.
Yeah, sure.
I heard that another library pays something like $40,000 a year to the Journal. And I said, why do you pay all that money? And it's for publishing things like this? I mean, I said, I think our library just pays as we go. We don't have a
Right.
contract with them.
Yeah, no.
Okay, all
It's
right.
about $400,
Isn't
I think.
that a lot of money? Wow.
Yeah, that's a ton.
All right, the new business, we've already had the appointment made for the vacant position, so we can bypass that. Correct. We have a presentation
For you.
by Mr. Pritz on our planned capital projects. Mr. Pritz.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Matt.
Once these are passed around, give us your presentation. Start, thank you. Great.
Okay, so we passed around a couple of documents. One is a copy of the presentation. Another is an Excel sheet, which is 3 pages, which lists all the projects that we're going to talk about in the context of the presentation. And then the last 2 documents are copies of the Frederick Quinn report on the building and the Keller Group report on the mechanicals. Okay? So with that said, here we go. First I want to talk a little bit about what the Special Reserve Fund is. It's separate from all other library funds. It's funded through transfers of reserves from the general fund. The last time that the board made a transfer was in 2014, which was just after the completion of the 2013 renovation. And that amount was $1.2 million. It was actually made in 2 installments, a $600,000 and followed by another $600,000 installment for a total of $1.2 million. Expenditures in this fund are for planned or emergency repairs and alterations of the library buildings and equipment. And over the last 5 years, we spent approximately $800,000 from this fund. If you think back, it includes things like the installation of the chiller, the painting of the exterior, the caulking of all the windows and the doors, as well as the refresh of all of the patron and staff desktop computing, amongst other things. When we spend from the special reserve fund, we specifically ask the board for permission. And then, once the board gives us permission, then we go ahead and spend the funds and charge the special reserve fund for that purchase. As of June 30th, the fund balance in the special reserve fund is $1,071,500. So the way that we determine the cash needs of the fund is we look at basically 4 sources of information. We hire consultants to look at the exterior of the building. In this case, we hired Frederick Quinn Company's consultant, construction management. And then we hire another consultant to look at the mechanical systems of the building, and that's Keller Design Group. To assess the IT components in the library, we look at the IT department, who are very knowledgeable, completely understand the life cycle and the replacement points of the various equipment in the building, and is able to render an expert opinion on that. And then the last resource we look at is administration and maintenance. We'll look at other needs which are not necessarily captured by IT or the consultants. So, for example, in the current year's budget, we have a line item to address the walls in and around the Commons meeting room. They're fabric walls which have aged over the last 22 or 3 years. And then there's paneling where the veneer is coming off, and should be refreshed to keep it looking good for the public. Those are the kinds of things that Frederick Quinn is not going to address, or the mechanical consultant is not going to address, but something that we have to notice as we walk through the library. So in summary, we use 4 sources of information, and then we present that to the board every 4 to 5 years, and the board determines funding through transfers. As I said, the last time we transferred, the board transferred money was in 2014. The administrative operational approach to the account is that we take a conservative approach to capital projects. We want to make sure that items or systems that are mission critical and are deteriorating will be presented to the board for replacement or rehab long before the point of critical failure. Because what we're trying to do is not create or not allow a domino type of situation to occur. When one system goes bad and then you have water leaking in, for example, that starts to deteriorate certain structures inside the wall. We much rather catch it before that happens, so that we can isolate it from anything else having to do with the structure of the library in that case. It also eliminates the occurrence of collateral damage to adjacent items or systems. Items or systems which function in relative isolation can be repaired quickly or are more likely to be pushed beyond a normal replacement cycle. An example of that would be desktop computers. Corporations and other entities usually use somewhere between a 3 and 5 year cycle to replace their desktop computing power. On the last cycle, we pushed it all the way to 7 years, and you'll see in this plan we're looking at approximately the 6-year mark, which, so if somebody loses their desktop computer because a board goes out or something like that, we can quickly replace that board and get them up. Plus, we always have some spares from the last fleet of computers that we could actually put in place on a temporary basis until their system gets fixed. That's an example of something that is pushed beyond a normal replacement cycle and is relatively isolated. The impact of the fund on property taxes, there is no impact, no immediate impact on property tax levels by transferring money into the special reserve fund. The transfers to the fund are made out of reserves held in the general fund. Now, it's important to acknowledge that those reserves were generated in large part by property taxes from the past, and where we see we have an excess of funds or something like that, those funds in a fiscal year, those funds are added to the fund balance available for these types of projects in the general fund. So if we look at the Frederick Quinn Construction Management Report, they identified a total of $1,425,000 of repairs. And I do want to say where they've given a range, we've taken the upper end of the range. And the reason they give a range is because they're not doing a detailed analysis where they're actually peeling back layers and doing exploration. They're looking at it from a much higher level. So the short-term needs from the Quinn report are new roof, some lighting, pavers, and retaining wall repairs. Longer-term needs are a new copper roof for the tower and complete replacement of the parking lot. And then there's several other smaller projects that are included in there. So at this point, I thought we'd take a moment and talk about the roof. It's the most expensive item. It consists of two pieces, which add up to just over $1 million, their estimate. The library has several different levels of roof which were installed in two different time frames. The roof on the eastern end of the building, which is the original building, was installed, I believe, 23 or 24 years ago, and has been out of warranty for 2 to 3 years. The roof on the western end, which is the new part of the library, was installed in 1997, so 22 years ago, and that's just recently out of warranty. The significance of warranty is if there are any failures in seams or material, etc., then the roofing company will come out and make those repairs on them. Once you're out of warranty, it's all on your dime. Dave has an active program where he looks at the roof every year and identifies areas which need to be addressed with simple patches or repairs to make sure that that we're keeping the insulation under the roof dry. FQC suggested that the newer roof, which is on the western end of the building and is about 25,000 square feet, if I remember, should be replaced in the very near term as it shows the most wear. The older roof happens to be in better shape due to the materials that were used, or higher quality materials used apparently. So its replacement could possibly be put off. For the 2019-20 budget cycle, the administration budgeted to replace both roofs. And we budgeted $1.2 million for the following reasons. We believe that the existing insulation level was insufficient according to the code currently in effect at the village. We thought that our roofs would put on with an R20 value, which is basically an insulation rating. That tells you how much heat or cool will be retained in the building. And the code is for R30. The older roof, which is in better shape and shows, is in better shape and due to some of the better materials that were used at the time, showed signs of chalking, which is a sign of deterioration which makes replacement more imminent. So chalking occurs when the sun hits the material and causes the surface of that material to deteriorate to such a degree that if you rub it, it's like you've rubbed a chalkboard, and they call it chalking. And though FQC toured the facility, they did not do an exhaustive examination of the roof. They didn't core it, they didn't do any extensive testing. They noted general comments about its condition. Due to that, we added a contingency to provide for unforeseen issues. As I said, we try to take a conservative approach so that if there's any surprise, it's on the downside. In other words, if we budgeted $1.2 million and it only costs $1 million, that's good for us. Okay. Subsequent to the passage of the budget, we have engaged a couple of roofing companies to help develop a more exact estimate. One is Sullivan Roofing, who's been with us for a long time and has come out year after year to help us take a look at the condition of the roof and make repairs. And the other company is WeatherGuard. WeatherGuard may or may not be familiar to you, but it is one of the companies that was on the list of bid respondents to the job at the ice rink of the Park District. And it was brought to our attention by Joe McCullough. Actually, WeatherGuard, I believe, is the company that won the bid. Okay, and it was about $100,000, but for a much smaller roof. It was 6,300 square feet. Our total roof comes close to about 40,000, which is just short of an acre. They cored, one of the companies cored the roof. Basically, they took a cylinder sample, like you see when National Geographic does ice cores in the Arctic and so forth. And they confirmed that, in fact, our insulation was up to code. Our insulation is at R30. So our concern that we would have to do a tear-off to basically up the insulation from R20 to R30 is no longer valid.
Which is good.
Both companies recommended replacing both roofs at the same time, and primarily due to the chalking on the roof that's in better condition. Of course, they're selling roofs. So any good businessman would want to sell more of his product. Both companies suggested stripping the roofs only where significant problems exist. An example of a significant problem would be around the chiller. And around the chiller, due to the vibration of the old equipment, it caused seams to open up and leakage to occur where the insulation under the roof has gotten wet. And once insulation gets wet, it's compromised structurally, and of course its effectiveness is also compromised. Both companies suggested actually leaving the balance of the roof intact and then just covering it with a new membrane. So if you're a homeowner and you put on and you have a roof on your house and it's only one layer, you can have a roofing company come out and just put another layer on your house without tearing it off. But the third time you have to tear everything off and go back, because you can't have more than two hits generally.
Would this be the second roof then?
This would be the second roof. Okay. A little bit of a challenge with that though, because when you build the second roof, you actually have to put a 1/2 inch of substrate underneath to create a stable surface for it to, attach to, for the new membrane to attach to. It's not membrane on membrane. And when you do that, you increase the
weight.
Well, you increase the weight, but you also increase the height or the thickness of the roof. And in several spots, that thickness would be above the rim of the building that surrounds the roof. And then that would have to be built up.
Of course.
So the working estimates that we have from these two companies are a little less than $1 million. Only amounts that have been obtained through competitive bidding will actually matter in the end. So it's easy to say, it's going to be 950, it's going to be 850, 900. And very often, they do enough to come up with a ballpark, but until they're actually engaged in a bidding process, they're not going to do the work to develop an exact number. It may be higher, it may be lower, okay? And we always want it to be lower. The Keller Design Group, which looked at the mechanicals, identified $260,000 of needed repairs over the next several years. Short-term needs are exhaust fans. We have exhaust fans throughout the building, particularly for the bathrooms and for other operations. Slightly longer-term needs are replacement of chiller pumps. We have a secondary electrical distribution panel down in the basement, which needs to be replaced. I believe it's as old as the 1960 version of the building. And then certain elements of the heating system. None of the items that Keller Design identified at this point are what I would call really big ticket items. You know, a lot of them are in the $2,000 to $5,000 range. There's a few that are around 15 to 20. But overall, it's, you know, when you add them all up, you add up to 260,000.
It's not like a roof.
No, certainly not. The IT department identified over the next several years approximately $1.4 million of needed repairs. In the short term, in the current year's budget that we look at, we have servers and switches, which we talked about at some length in a previous meeting. We have staff copiers, self-check upgrades. Our self-check machines associated with the Biblioteca sorter are aged out. They're running Windows 7 as a matter of fact, which is several versions behind. So we really need to do something to upgrade that. Our phone system is 8 years old, and it's getting impossible to find parts. When we can, we find them on eBay and we buy them to hold them so that if we lose a card or something in the system, we're able to replace it with a minimal amount of downtime. Longer term needs are staff and patron computers. I mentioned that we did that a few years ago, but you know, in a couple of years, they'll be 6 years old and ripe for replacement again. And that should be about $160 or so thousand. And then we also have to replace all of the other computers that we have in the building because they'll all age out at about the same time. You know, so you know, we have computers for the classroom, computers to lend patrons, computers for the catalog system that are around the building. You know, they're all getting to that age in a couple of years. We'll have to replace the patron copiers. We'll have to replace the Wi-Fi access points. I mean, it's like, you know, you look up in the ceiling as you're walking around, there's little square white boxes on the ceiling, you know, which look pretty innocuous. I think we have 30 or 40 of them, you know, so they would all have to be replaced. And then the big long-term ticket item would be the sorter. The thing that is down in the patron services workroom where the books come down the line and it gets sorted into different boxes so that they can be put back on the floor, on the shelf quickly. We installed that in 2013 or 2014, and in 2023, 2024, it'll be 10 years old, which is pretty old for a piece of IT type equipment. In the administrative and maintenance review, we identified $456,000 of needed repairs. Sorry, I'll talk faster. Which includes the roof contingency, data center, fire suppression. Right now, we just have water in the data center, which doesn't go too well with IT equipment.
Oh, definitely.
So we're looking at installing a halon system to, prevent, losing all of our data equipment to a water. Sorry about that. I guess we'll switch to the paper copy. Just a couple of more slides. And then, as I mentioned, the Commons area and meeting room, the Commons meeting room handling, and the Commons area and meeting room furniture are the other items that are significant in this $456,000. The largest item in there is the roof contingency, which is $175,000. So if we look at a summary of the project,
Greg, what's the roof contingency as opposed to a new roof? What is contingency?
so when I created the documents, I used Frederick Quinn's exact high-end estimate, which was $1,025,000. We thought it would be wiser to make it $1,200,000 in the budget. And the difference is the roof contingency,
Okay,
just in case.
sure.
If you look at the summary of projects, what we've done is we've scaled it across 5 years, actually forever, because I don't know where thereafter is going to take us. Probably beyond a lot of our retirements. But you can see that the $1,425,000 in the right column from Frederick Quinn, the $260,000 from Calor, the $1,444,000 from IT, and the $456,000 from administration, sums to a total of $3.6 million, just a little shy of that. You turn the page, and the next page does a rolling fund balance. So the upper left cell in the chart is $1,071,499, and if you remember from earlier in the presentation, that's the fund balance as of the end of June. And then each year I subtract the amount of planned expenditures, and then you see the fund balance at the end of the year. If you go all the way to the right, you'll see that we start with $1,071,499, and we have planned expenditures according to my presentation of $3,006,000, which leaves the library short in its special reserve fund of $2.5 million. The board needs to consider a funding and transfer strategy in order to make sure that we get the right projects done at the right time and that we maintain solvency in the special reserve fund. It's up to you guys.
So you're talking about taking from the general, putting into the special.
Next page.
Oh.
So the funding sources that the library has available to it total $9,546,000, which is the total of cash and investments on the 6/30/2019 balance sheet. It's split the following ways. The special reserve fund has $1,071,499, which should be familiar at this point. So it's already in the fund. The special revenue funds have a total of $102,543. If you remember, those are funds that are related to special taxes that go directly into a fund for those particular purposes. So auditing, for example, we have a tax rate for auditing. It goes into the auditing fund, and when we pay our auditors, it comes out of that fund. It's like a mini entity, okay, outside of the general fund.
What other things would come out of there besides auditing?
General liability insurance, workers' compensation insurance, social security expenses, building and site expenses. So like, Dave's budget to do contractual maintenance and things of that nature.
Okay.
And then that leaves $8,372,000 in the general fund. However, we still have about 2 months of expenses to pay out of the general fund to finish up the year before the next installment of property taxes starts to roll in. So we run at about 550, this month it was 536, I believe, but generally we run at about $550,000 a month. And so if we subtract that from the 8.3 million, we're left with 7.3 million that's available for transfer. And this is where the funds will have come from. It's the fund balance in the general fund is the accumulation from the beginning of time of all of the deficits and all of the surpluses that have happened year over year. To answer your question a little bit, Carolyn, this is where the $778,000 would actually go. Okay.
Got it.
And that's my presentation. The other document that I gave you is this spreadsheet on legal size paper. And the spreadsheet shows in detail all of the items from Frederick Quinn, from Kellor, and from administration, including all of the IT expenditures. And each project is individually placed in a year in which we expect those expenses to occur.
Awesome.
The long and short of it is, and you could tie these numbers, you should be able to tie these numbers back to reports that were also passed around the table. The long and short of it is, if you don't want to do a project this year, you still got to do it next year. And it's, and it's still $3.6 million or thereabout in order to take care of the building and the equipment in the building and so forth. So, that's it. Questions?
Sure.
Okay, I have some questions to start off. Just background information, once we transfer money from general operating into special reserve, we can't transfer it back.
Right.
Is that correct? So you only want to put in there as much as you're going to spend, in other words, you're only going to spend too much.
Right.
And I was just wondering, is there any real legal reason why you just can't pay for things out of general operating? I mean, why the necessity for putting it into special reserve and then taking it out? Is there any prohibition against, if you need money for it, maybe something like this, to just spend it right out of general operating?
I don't think there's a legal prohibition from doing that. I think there's a practical reason for doing it, and the practical reason is that deferred maintenance is a great way to meet your budgetary needs for operations. So if you look at, for example, the state of Illinois that has huge pension funding issues. Throughout the years, they've decided, either consciously or unconsciously, not to pay into these funds as they should have paid, and the liability is growing, where they've negotiated a contract which increases the liability because it's a free giveaway, in the current fiscal year, and it causes that funding issue. Look at the roads, and the infrastructure throughout the country. I mean, I think it's also.
So in a way, it sort of forces you to save that money for special costs, if you do in fact do transfers. So it looks like if we wanted to do the roof, we might even have to transfer money this year.
Right.
And, but we could transfer it like a month before it's needed? Is there any reason?
No, there's no reason that you couldn't do that.
Okay, all right. And then I have just a couple of totally different questions. I sort of like to see the things that need to be repaired. Not that I have any professional expertise in this, but I was wondering, and I would be sort of interested in an optional tour for board members to look at the stuff in the basement and to even climb up the roof.
You've been up on the roof. It's not an easy.
No, it's not, but with this heat,
Wear flat shoes.
Let's say get one of those cranes that's like,
Yeah, it's a ladder, and you got to throw your legs over. What's harder is getting back off of the roof.
I would think so, I would think so.
take video of the rest of the trustees.
you could have the August picture out there.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely, and because it's all white, If you go up on a sunny day, it's,
That's fine, you know,
it's extra warm, so.
Well, maybe basement, because like all this equipment, I would be interested to see.
That's a
Yeah,
good point.
we could arrange a
Just a little
walk.
walkthrough or something like that. And then finally, one more.
Sure.
question.
Hey,
Yeah,
Con, to piggyback on that though, it'd be interesting to go and see the passport.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I was gonna suggest actually
Yeah.
that, you know, it's been quite a while since we've done any kind of a trustee tour and we should line that
Yeah,
up. So
yeah.
I have not anticipated you'd want to go down to the basement and see that stuff, but you certainly could.
You know, just a short.
I think
Absolutely.
it's
Just see
fun.
I'll tell you
Sure.
what's really cool is the boilers.
Well,
love the
I want to
boilers.
see them, I absolutely have that on the tour. Okay, and my final question is this. Recently, I replaced a very small roof on my house, and I was trying to get some contractor to replace the roof and put solar panels up at the same time. And I couldn't find anyone that would do that. Maybe there's people out there who want to do that. And I don't know if they're out there, or if you've looked into that, or if anyone has looked into that possibility of replacing the roof and putting solar panels up there at the same time. My second part of my question is, if they're not out there, or you haven't found them, is there anything that we need to think of when putting the roof on to make sure that if we do choose down the road to put solar panels on, that there wouldn't be anything that we would have done that would make it difficult or impossible to put them on?
So, I did at one point look at solar panels for the building, and what I was really looking for was a government program that would pay for the bulk of them. But most, if not all, of the government programs are for residential. Commercial, even government type buildings would have to pay the full fare, at least at the time. There might be new programs at this point. I believe that putting the solar panels on the roof, you still have to have an intact roof below it, and then it's applied to the surface, and of course, it's all caulked in and everything to make sure that there's no leaking, so. I believe in our area, for complete independence from from Commonwealth Edison was somewhere in the $1 million range.
And I wouldn't necessarily think that we would have complete independence, but, if we could cut down on our bill a lot.
Right.
that'd be
So
great.
what they figure is, and the way it appears to be, coming out is that there's like a 10-year payback, roughly. So if we spend about $100,000 a year on electricity, then 10 years would be, $1 million, and that's about what, with a system to replace all of the kilowatt hours. We use just shy of 100,000 kilowatt hours a year, so, like 8,000 a month on average.
And the thing on this is, especially in our area, they should be angled, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because of, and flat roofs, how feasible is to put something
Big
like
problem.
that?
There's brackets that,
And it would
to
still,
achieve the angle. It's not clear to me what happens in high.
but
winds
you
and
said
stuff.
these roofs are well over 20 years as it is, so
Yeah.
they lasted. I'm just thinking back when I had a flat roof and we decided to change the pitch because we had it replaced, and then a couple of years later, we're having issues again, so flat roofs scare me.
Diane, anything? Nothing? Anything? Carolyn?
Yeah, I needed some clarification. I guess I was on the wrong page, so my notes aren't accurate. We talked about there being two roofs, and I see the newer and the older roof. You mentioned, okay, both roofs would be 1,000,002. The west roof, is that the old roof or the new roof?
That's the new roof.
Okay, and then I'm guessing the other one's the east roof? Okay.
Yeah, so close to the back, close to the back door of the library, what I call the
Okay.
back door, the employee entrance, basically.
And is the east roof as big as the west roof, would you say?
No,
No?
the east roof is, I
About-
believe, about 13,000
Oh,
square feet.
okay.
The west roof, I think, is about 26,000.
Okay, well,
Okay.
that's
So-
good.
Sorry?
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, considerable difference.
And there's actually 7 different roofs or 7 different roofing levels.
Oh, dear
And
God.
so it's,
Carolyn, would you mind if I follow up on your question?
No, go right
real
ahead.
quick? If we turn to page 23, the MEP SP system assessment report, there's this nice aerial
Oh,
view.
yeah, look at that.
So
Okay.
when you're talking about the west roof and the east roof, like where's the dividing line? Where the shadow is?
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So everything above that line is considered to be the east roof. Everything below that line is considered to be the
Oh,
west
thank
roof.
you.
So, and is there a separate north roof or are we just talking east and west?
East and west.
Okay,
So it actually, you
Oh,
can see
that is
where
the
there's
difference.
potential of different levels on each, the east or the.
Yeah, if you count them all, it's
Sure.
about, there are, I believe, are seven
One,
different
two,
levels.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not counting the counter.
Right.
And then I just had one easy question. On this Excel spreadsheet where you have the year when we're anticipating the repair, but it says year 7, does that mean in this year, this is 7 years old?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good, thank you, that's all I have.
All right, marvelous. So we'll I'll put on the agenda at some point to consider transfers into the special reserve account.
Is this, I mean, I understand what Karen said about putting it right beforehand, but it might be less of a shock if we did it little by little, you know, like say if we need 2, but 1 now, like they did with the other time when you said they
Well, I-
split it, yeah.
You know, it's a bookkeeping issue. Money doesn't get transferred anymore. You know, what I have is, what the library has is like one big account, and all of the money all of the money resides in that account, the investments. And we do bookkeeping to make sure that they're appropriately split into the different funds. So, you know, it doesn't make any difference. What would be nice about a single transaction is that it's a single transaction instead of, for example, 12.
Less hassle with
Yeah.
switching things.
Right.
Yeah. Okay,
All right, very good, thank you so much.
thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
great, wonderful, thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, so I had wanted to talk about our bylaws and the trustee manual, but I think we'll put that off. For
Thank
another
you.
time. No, just let me
I
ask you
did
guys a
review
question.
it all and I read it.
That's great. So if I wanted to meet with you individually, because both these documents were just my ideas. So if I wanted to meet with you individually to go over what your individual thoughts, would that be okay in the next month? So that when we do have the meeting on this, we don't spend a whole lot of time with all of our thoughts all intermingled.
But then we won't know, see, I think we learn from everyone else's comments. Do you think it takes longer, is that what you're saying?
I'm just trying to make it
Less
shorter
painful,
meeting. Yeah, less
I
painful.
think it's better that we're all together.
Yeah, because you know,
Perfect.
like, somebody says something and
Yeah.
I think of that
You-
and,
That's
you
fine.
know.
You could scooch it up, do you still want to have a discussion?
I think people are.
Still, I know, I mean, are we still going to keep it on the agenda
Yes.
as a discussion?
Yes, well, we'll have the new trustee here, so we can have a discussion. If we were at a consensus, I think we can make a vote on it.
yeah, I think some of the changes are sort of just cleanup.
Right.
Especially the bylaws, it's really
Right.
clean up, right?
All right, it's just, it's,
Significant.
Yeah, I didn't think so either, so. Okay, we'll put that off to the next
So-
month.
So it can be on the agenda for a vote, but we
It can.
may or may not actually.
Right, we can decide.
yes, I
Yes.
think that's, I think.
All right, thank you so much, I appreciate that. All right, is there any other? Carolyn, no, Linda, no, Diane? No.
I did do a workshop.
You did?
I did the full workshop, I was gonna bring it in,
Yeah,
but I was getting a ride today and I was in kind of a hurry to get to her car, so I might bring it next month to
Alright.
show you.
Great,
It was very nice, very
Nice.
good thing.
appreciate that, that's great. Karen?
No.
Nothing, nothing from either. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, and
Second.
second, all right. Diane, would you please take the roll?
So should we be keeping those stuff?
Yes. All right. Karen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you all very much.